Hey guys, Andrew Henderson, nomadcapitalist.com here in Bogota, Colombia, doing a little bit of work on getting a residency. Was just at one of the embassies today and made a lot of progress. Really excited about that, and going to be putting out some new videos in the near future about residences and citizenships here in Central and South America. We have a lot of videos on our channel already. If you haven't seen them, go check them out about second passports. But in this video, I wanted to share with you two questions that I think you should ask before you get a second passport. And anyone who's followed what I do at Nomad Capitalist knows that I'm really all about planning ahead, being proactive, thinking about what's going to happen 5-10 years ago in the global landscape, and really having the right mindset, really preparing yourself before you go and do something. Because I've seen firsthand that when you don't prepare yourself, when you just jump into stuff unprepared and thinking that, hey, I got this advice from a blog, what could possibly go wrong? I see that's where a lot of problems come into place. And so I wanted to talk about two questions that I think you should ask yourself. And I wanted to discuss this while I'm here in Colombia, because a lot of people in the blogosphere, which I think is largely targeted to US and Canadian citizens, talk about Central and South America as places to get your residencies and get your citizenships. And the terms that I see thrown around a lot are fast, second passport, easy, second passport, cheap, second passport. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we talked about back when I hosted big conferences in ballrooms was fast, easy, cheap. You should pick two. My personal opinion, cheap is probably the worst thing that you can do. I understand not everybody has unlimited resources, but I think that just being in the mindset of cheap is probably not a good place to start. Fast is possible. Easy is a good thing, especially if you have someone helping you and they smooth the process for you. Cheap is the one that I would avoid, but let me give you the two questions that I would ask, because I do see a lot of misinformation, and I do see a lot of people who don't really understand the process talking about second passports, especially in this part of the world, which is so open to foreigners. And so the two questions to ask yourself are, number one, what am I willing to commit to get the second passport? And number two, why am I doing it? Number one is, what am I willing to commit to? I did a video a couple months ago on a concept I call paper citizenship. I coined the phrase paper citizenship to basically explain where you go and get residence in a country, and there's no, it is stated that you don't have to live there, or it is implicit through the fact that there is no stated physical presence requirement in order to renew your residence permit. So for example, you go to Panama. Panama is the one everyone talks about. You go there, you get a permanent residence visa. The stay is like 1 day a year, and you go for that 1 day a year, which is basically zero. It's something, but it's basically zero. And after 5 years, you're eligible to apply for citizenship. And so if you get citizenship through that process, I would call it a paper citizenship, because really the only reason you're getting it is because you have this residency on paper, and you're just waiting out the appropriate period of time before you can apply for citizenship. Some countries may require you to learn some of the language. A lot of Spanish-speaking countries aren't that strict about language requirements, even if they say they are. But there really aren't that many requirements other than get a piece of paper and just wait. Now, the challenge with that kind of paper citizenship is that some countries like Panama, I know people who've been waiting a lot longer than 5 years, they haven't gotten their citizenship. So the key word in paper citizenship is you can apply after X number of years. You may not be granted the citizenship. You may be put into limbo for a while if the country is rather bureaucratic and slow. But that's what paper citizenship is. So when you're going and getting a second passport, ask yourself, what am I willing to do? More and more in Central and South America, countries are moving towards some kind of physical presence requirement. Ecuador recently changed theirs to, I believe, 9 months a year. So the naturalization window there isn't that long, but 9 months a year is a long time. I mean, you're living there and probably should be paying tax there. And maybe they don't get around to checking that today. Who knows what will happen in 3 years, whether they ask you if you've paid taxes because you've lived there 9 months a year. And obviously for some people it's an issue, for some it's not. But what are you willing to do? Are you willing to live somewhere 9 months a year? Are you willing to live somewhere 6 months a year? Are you willing to live somewhere 3 months a year, 1 month a year? What are you willing to do? Heck, For some people, the idea of going to Panama once a year sounds annoying. If you live in Asia, just schlepping your way halfway around the world could be annoying, even for that one day. Are you willing to pay some taxes in a country? Portugal, for example, has a passport or a residency program that can get you a citizenship. But if you're structuring your business offshore in a truly ideal way, that's not going to work with Portugal residency, and you're going to have to change and pay a little bit of tax. We did a video on that. Are you willing to pay a little tax? Are you willing to pay a lot of tax? Are you willing to set up a company? Are you willing to invest in property? What are you willing to do? And basically it comes down to the big things. What are you willing to do? Physical presence, how much time are you willing to spend, if any? And number two is, what are you willing to commit, largely in terms of money? I would say time, but you can always outsource the time. So that's question number one. What are you willing to commit to when it comes to spending time in a country and putting your money on the line? Question number two is more important, I think. And it's kind of the whole ethos of getting the second passport. And that's, why do you want the second passport? Having a second passport to me is very important, but one thing I never do is convince someone. Very rarely do I get anyone calling me and saying, Andrew, convince me. But occasionally someone will come up to me, I'll speak at a conference, whatever. They'll say, Andrew, do you think I need one? And I say, well, do you think you need one? I don't know. And maybe there's one or two things I give them to kind of consider. But in general, I don't want to be in the business of convincing folks. If you're not sure if you need it, maybe you don't. And I think there's an important question to ask yourself. When you're in the blogosphere, you're reading the blogs, you're reading the forums, you're talking to folks who are so in love with the idea of that fast, easy, and cheap. It has to be all three. I don't want to do any work. I don't want to make any commitments. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to show up. Better yet, I don't even want to show up. I want them to FedEx the passport to me in a box. Now, I've had a passport FedEx to me once. I paid a lot of money for it. And I got it very quickly. That's what happens when you pay, right? You get what you pay for. I think that putting all those three together, fast, easy, and cheap, if you're doing that, it's almost like the people who say, I want to outsource my Tinder account and just, show up for the dates, and then the girls just come to my house, right? There's this idea where I don't want to put in any work. Well, maybe if you don't want to put in any work, there's not a need for the end result. I think that what I see from analyzing over 50,000 applications of people who asked to work with me in the last 19 or 20 months, we did a big review of these applications recently. And we created different avatars, the avatars that I do help and the avatars that I don't want to help. And I think that one of the themes was people who say, I just want the passport to be handed to me. And there was really a lack of clarity as to why those folks needed a passport. Or there were more nefarious reasons. If I have a second passport, then I can not pay U.S. taxes anymore. Well, maybe if you renounce your U.S. citizenship, but not just by having a passport. And so I think that with the way the world is changing, with FATCA, with CRS, with a lot more information sharing, with a lot more xenophobia, with a lot more connectiveness of systems, my concern is that if your issue is fast, easy, cheap, don't want to do any work, don't want to be involved in the process, don't want to commit to anything, you're going to find yourself in a situation where 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, you're going to get your citizenship, or you're not going to get it because things have changed and people are paying more attention. And I think that in this part of the world especially, people have relied on loopholes for a long time. There was one video that I was watching on YouTube where the guy said, you can enroll in school in a country, never go to school, and they don't check. And then a couple years later, you ask for the passport and they give it to you. Well, I can tell you, so many countries I've dealt with and I've seen and I've studied and I've been to and I've talked to people in, people are catching up. Even in countries that you think aren't really that on the ball, they're catching up. And so the last thing you want to do is just have these nebulous expectations of what you want, nebulous goals, go out and do something kind of shady because it seems easy, and end up, in the worst case scenario, in some trouble, which has happened. In the best case scenario, maybe you get the passport, but maybe there's a problem with it in the future. And the most likely scenario, I would say, is that maybe they wise up in 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and they make it difficult. I think that's the direction that the world is heading, and I think that only focusing on fast, easy, and cheap, and just trying to just have a total lack of commitment to the process is not going to work. Now, there's a way to have a total lack of commitment to the process. That's to go to St. Lucia or Dominica, pay $100,000, and they will FedEx the passport to you. And I think that that's a great system, and I work with people, just have 2 guys right now who are jumping on and doing that, and we're handling paperwork for them and walking them through that process. And that's okay. It's fast. With the right help, it's easy. It's certainly not cheap. And so I think that defining those expectations and defining what it is that you really want, defining your own personal avatar is important when it comes to getting a second passport. I say this not to nag. I say this because I see the end result. I see people who are 2, 3, 5 years ahead. I see people, I saw one guy who was trying just to get a residency somewhere, which should have been easy. It took him 2.5 years. He was finally rejected for trying to take a little shortcut. People are wising up to the shortcuts, and I think if you're not defining your why, then you're going to potentially have problems. You may not have the problems now, but honestly, if there's going to be a problem, you'd rather have it now to go back to the drawing board rather than waiting 5 years, knowing that you have your second passport coming, not doing anything else about it, and then 5 years from now there's a problem. So the 2 questions that I would ask when I'm looking at getting a second passport, especially if you've been hanging out in the blogosphere and the forums of misinformation, number 1, what am I going to do? Number 2, why am I doing it, and how am I going about it? What are my priorities? 2 very important questions to ask. Now, I have a lot of videos here on the channel, and as I said, we're coming out with more on passports, whether it's the economic ones that are quick. I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, those make sense, more so than playing the waiting game. I have some experience there, but we have lots of videos on all kinds of passports, different second passport topics and theories here on the channel. Make sure you subscribe, and if you want to find out a lot more information, you can also go to nomadcapitalist.com.